Hey everyone, welcome to the June 14th SIG Release biweekly meeting. My name is Jeremy. I'll be the host today. The chat has, in just 1 second, has the agenda. There we go. If you could open that up and add yourself as an attendee, that'd be super awesome. Just a reminder, this meeting is covered by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, which essentially can be boiled down to please be excellent to one another. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on YouTube sometime later today. With that, let's kick off the agenda. Are there any new folks that would like to introduce themselves? We'd like to take a break at the beginning, give folks a chance to say hello. Going once. Oh, okay, go for it.
Can I speak?
Yeah, go for it.
Hi everyone, my name is Shubham Shah. I work as a Java developer at FedEx, and this is my second SIG meeting and the third Kubernetes meeting. So excited to be a part of it.
Awesome, happy to have you here. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to sub-project updates. Release engineering, who wants to take that one?
So let's maybe step back, because I know that Lori had mentioned in chat that that she would love to go first,
Okay.
since there may be a calendar conflict. So maybe we'll zoom back into, yeah,
sorry, didn't see that. Go ahead, Lori.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, so two things from me. The first is that on Friday, we got together and talked about the SIG release roadmap and what we can do to get some of those items more defined and across the finish line ultimately. So if you want to pop up the spreadsheet that I've linked to in the agenda, just take a quick look at that. Because I can't.
Yeah, sorry, 1 second. Let me make you a co-host.
Okay.
You can bring it up.
Oh, all right.
That way you don't have to tell me what to do with the sliding and stuff. Okay, there you go. You should be able to share now.
Okay. So I'll do this. All right. So essentially, we focused largely on one topic, which was the moving the dev RPM package builds to community infrastructure, and spent a lot of time just breaking down initial steps and going over the issues and looking for action items that were described in there. So we came away with a pretty big section of work here that could be just for this week. A lot of this is around the documentation and getting an understanding of scripts, just setting the groundwork for what's to come later. And so Arno was there, as well as Veronica and Rob, and took the bulk of these items. And then if you look at the initial issue, there's a comment from DIMS with a long checklist. And I'm wondering who could work with me on figuring out which of those items are still needed, because the issue's from 2019, so I'm sure some things have been done. But,
I would toss out that entire checklist, to be honest. It's
okay.
actually just directionally, I think it was built out ahead of like release engineering really being much of a thing, but also may run have some may run counter to some of the steps captured in other checklists. I think there is an issue that Ben has commented on recently that has a pretty good idea of the things that need to be done. And that context is important because Ben is one of the only people who has access to do this work.
Yes.
So I would take I would build around Ben's plan.
Yeah,
it's what I worked from today to look at that script and to begin to understand it. And I've just kind of started a conversation around understanding the guts of it. So I can see if I can dig out that issue. I should have it to hand.
Yeah, So we
Sounds
did
good.
take that comment into consideration if you look down further below. So here are some other items that came out through the conversation. And what I'd like to do is put these in sequence. Sequence and then a few items that are kind of clustered together so that we can tell the story. And then these items from Ben, from the comment that he left recently, would be folded into that. So then we can see from beginning to end what the main milestones would be and talk about doing them once this initial batch of work is complete. So I'm wondering who could help me do this sequencing of things into a story.
Given that I'm one of the few people who has like worked on that script too, I can help with that. That said,
Okay.
I have presentations coming up this week as well as prep for Open Source Summit next week. So my bandwidth is going to be a little tricky. I think the only concern I would have is starting to dig into too many of these items when I think a lot of them may be relevant. So there is some, I can take a look at this sheet and try to maybe do some initial prioritization given what you have.
Okay.
What's the best way for y'all to receive feedback? Do you want me to like straight up delete things? Do you want me to leave comments?
Yeah. Yeah, you could just move things in an order. Like the goal is to get it done. So what do we need to do to get it done in what order? Thinking about the most valuable parts first and what we would do early to make the remainder easier,
Yeah, I would say for release engineering folks, the biggest thing is to just, I think, build the debs and RPMs the same way we would any other artifact during the release cycle and leave them in a place that is easy to pick up. If it's really getting that build process off of Googler's laptop is I think the biggest first thing to do. And I think it should be fairly easy to just run this in. I don't like simply, fairly, just, but there, being like putting this script in somewhere in the in the order of operations for the release process closer to the actual second phase of the release makes sense as a first step.
And based on the key thing I pulled away from this was an understanding of why Google can't share those keys. Ben doesn't have access to those keys. He uses an internal service to do the signing, so he doesn't even physically have them. And then the second thing was just that question I asked Stephen on just on the SIG release channel in relation to that tool being Google internal. Do you think it's a large undertaking to replicate that and re-implement that? Or will we have to wait and see?
I think it's to question the value of doing that in the first place. Adolfo, I want to note that you have your hand up next. But I would say that I had started. I don't know if it's still on a laptop somewhere, but I had started rewriting all of this in Go actually, and I realized I never pushed it up, and it got really messy. So maybe it's a good thing I didn't push it up. But I would say that definitely around questions of like, because there are a lot of questions here around like maintaining GPG keys, and I have generally steered away from that stuff. Package managers are also starting to steer away from them. It's not completely done, but I like the idea of steering away from them until we prove that we actually need to maintain them. When we decide to do that, we would use some sort of secret management service within GCP, I believe. But there's also an additional question of using a third-party package cloud or something like that to effectively like just not have to do this work. Right. So I think before we get into let's rewrite all of the stuff, we should also get into
redesign, basically.
Do that. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Adolfo?
Yeah, I was going to say kind of the same thing. So before jumping in and starting to write some of those, because I just by a glimpse of some of the issues. I feel some of them are kind of outdated, and so probably we should first decide on the process on how we are actually going to build them and sign them, and are we signing them or someone else? And then also we also have to plan for sunsetting the old packages. So are we, for example, if we are getting a release, are we waiting as we do now for the Googlers to get the official packages in parallel? Because I assume we're going to be publishing new ones and old ones for a time. Are we waiting for them? Are we simply pushing out ours and waiting for them to as a best effort? So all of those questions have to be addressed before we start jumping on and writing the new stuff.
I think the first part is to make them available instead of having them build them, right? If they're available, then that does mean that we can do some sort of validation on the fact that they are the artifacts that we expect them to be. Then they can be signed through whatever mechanism that Google does it. Like, the first step is not to move them off of Google infrastructure. The first step is to just make it easier for them to sign it, right? And because if we're talking about moving off of Google infrastructure, we're also talking about moving it to Kubernetes community infrastructure. And the reason that we haven't jumped into moving that stuff is there's generally a freeze on doing any new infrastructure projects. That's going to bring a huge amount of spend into Kubernetes community infrastructure, which is part of the reason that I haven't been excited about, like, yes, this is the next project that we have to do, even though it's causing pain in different directions, right? So that's definitely something to consider. Mohammed, to your point in the chat, one thing I haven't heard about at all is using RPM Deb artifact registry feature from Google. That is under discussion as well. There are some open issues around artifact registry in general, moving us from GCR to artifact registry, but that is for container images first and foremost. If we prove out a scheme for container images, then maybe it makes sense to do the RPMs and debs there, but we haven't gotten that far yet.
Yeah, one low-hanging fruit is definitely we build those packages during staging, and we stick them in the staging bucket, and then modify the script so that they only download them and sign those.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So if you have more tasks, like a lot of good content, maybe it's written in the notes, but tasks that are essential to completing this goal, it would be great if we have them all in place, and then eventually transfer them or this link to the issue itself, so it's shared there. One thing that came up in the session on Friday was that because of this issue, there was a feeling that we should update the artifact management epic to remove this topic from that epic, and then focus that epic on something more specific and shorter term. And I think there are 3 bullet points in that issue, so maybe it's one of those other topics or some updated version.
Arnaud has his hand up for a question, I think.
Yeah.
Jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry for being late. I just want to get consensus of the 2 items assigned to me. What are we using for signature? And yeah, what are we using for signature? What mechanism we want to use for the system packages specifically?
In what sense do you mean that? I think, like, we have no mechanism to do so. Like, it is accepted that they're using GPG keys right now, and it's a system that we can't interfere with because ultimately it's getting shipped on the Google side, right? So we have no access or means to affect that process. So GPG keys for debs and RPMs. And Google owned GPG keys. Like that.
Yeah, but we can have our own GPG key. We don't need Google one.
To ship into Google owned Deb and RPM repositories, we would need Google keys.
But we don't want to ship inside Google infrastructure. We want to ship that inside.
Right. We want to ship it inside of Kubernetes community infrastructure, but we can't do that yet until Kate's Infra says it's okay to do another infrastructure project of this scale.
As a SIG Traffic Infra, it's okay to basically build new packages for the community.
Okay. Has Kate's Infra, does Kate's Infra have any mechanism for analyzing the spend for those packages? Because I know spend was a concern, which is why we freezed anything that could be infrastructure related.
The spend issue is related to distribution, not storage. So if we basically say we cut a version on 126, like we do a double distribution of system packages, one on Google infrastructure and the other one on the community infrastructure, the cost will be low because we serve only consumer for 126. Right now, the overall cost is an issue because we cover all the releases. But if we start to serve system package on the community infrastructure, the cost will be low. And we have a plan to basically shield the specific infrastructure for those system packages with CDN provider, and that's gonna help us absorb the cost. So cost in that case is not really an issue because we are working on a way to shield cost exhaustion in the future.
Okay, if you can just provide links to that in this sheet so that we can kind of thread it into the various issues. Lori had a question.
Yeah, I was just going to ask this again. Like I said, on Friday, we talked about updating the artifact management epic, just to make it smaller and also maybe take out the deb RPM topic from there because there was a belief that it was a bit duplicative. So irrespective of whether that is true or not, I just want somebody to work with me on this if that's possible.
Yeah, so I think we should keep it personally, because I view that epic as an epic of epics, as it were. So if we want a smaller epic for devs and RPMs, fine. But I think that because these conversations and some of them have been open since like 2017 or something, kind of thread all of these various artifacts together, we need like a one place to point someone and say like, yes, these are all the things that we were working on. If you want to view another epic, it's over here. But I think like that's the umbrella epic.
Okay, and I do remember you saying that a long time ago, so I wasn't sure if things had changed. Yeah, maybe we just need to have a.
It needs to be organized, better organized. That's
yeah. Like here's this super layer. It's like the initiative, and then here's 3 epics underneath that. So if you're willing to take 5 minutes and work with me on that, we can. I think that's easy.
Cool.
Wait. Okay. So I'll put you here as and then I think we can do this in like 5 minutes. So
my thinking when I looked at that at the time was that if we were to divvy up the umbrella epic into artifact type, that might make sense. And
maybe we can.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk about this async.
Yeah, let's take it offline. Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to also show one more thing. I took the release engineering project board and did this mapping, just the in progress and in review columns. So not everything. And I highlighted the items that were old on redness, which is fire. And then there's a lot of questions here sprinkled into like what my recommendations are for next step with these. So questions that somebody asked on the issue, then they just need a response. So it feels like there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in this bucket that could just move things along, move them forward. Obviously, also there's some complex policy questions that need perhaps clearer framing to be able to be resolved. So I'm wondering what the best way for us to make any progress on this might be. Should I just ping people in the Slack channel, ping them on the issue, combination? I did this view because it's all in one place. Thought it might be easy.
Well, I think that looking at some of those issues like separate, it's kind of hard to parse them, because over the years things change, and
Yeah.
maybe especially the older ones, we should really see them in context of the whole kind of project or idea that they were trying to build, because some of those are no, I mean, yeah, we have to find another way to look at them. I mean, I understand the way of seeing them kind of in a rotting state as time goes by, but sometimes looking at some of the issues separate from the whole context is I don't know, kind of difficult.
Yeah, I would burn these down in newest order first, personally, because I think that you know, to Adolfo's point, as time goes on, like the shapes of some of these things and the checklists that people have like spun up just don't make sense anymore, or they may be done. So I think working from the things that may be the more urgent because they're more recent makes sense. And that's just a flip of the list, right? But really, like actually doing the work, for the things that do not have assignees, I would get them assignees. For the things that have assignees that are maybe no longer active, I would remove those folks and reassign. And then for the things that, you know, are, you know, policy questions maybe need to be answered by, you know, trying to find a way of like what's policy maybe needs to be answered by a SIG chair, SIG lead, versus something that is something that can be worked on by, say, release engineering or release team. And then if it is a matter of like, we need folks to also sit down and understand, like chunk out the work too, who that should be. So I am seeing a bunch of topics that are kind of like assigned to leads. Yeah, a decent chunk of these are assigned to leads.
It could just be a matter of removing things from the project board that are frozen, if that's one step, and then your project board focuses on what's actually in progress, or moving them to their own column or something.
Yeah, so I think we should take some time to redo the project boards too, because we're currently using old or legacy projects, and we could be using projects beta and building out different like views and stuff like that. So I started doing that for release engineering, but we should really do them for all of them. Or we can do a single board and have separate views for each of the sub projects too.
Yeah, so you were starting to use that. All right, so I guess that would be an item for further discussion. My last question, and then I'll go, is I had suggested doing a 2-question survey to the community about your roadmap to figure out which order those items should fall into. Because, for example, this dev RPM package builds issue is at the bottom of your roadmap to-dos, but it's what we talked about on Friday. So I'm just wondering if that would be of interest, and if so, then it would be easy to get that out and collect the insights.
I would, so the survey questions. I feel like I would poll SIG release ahead of the entire community.
That's
I feel that I feel that there is going to be a bit of noise in doing that. And I think that's for me, the most important thing personally is like Salsa 3, complete Salsa 3, and anything outside of that, complete Salsa 3. I mean, and then, you know, kind of from the personnel perspective, making sure that we're thinking about sustainability in various areas, right? So whether that's in improving workflows, documentation, membership of various groups doing that ahead of any new work or any work that is not done. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, so we could take the items on the roadmap and then from this group, any others that you want to pull people about, send that pull to SIG Release, mailing list, get the feedback, look at it, share the feedback results, and then from there, update the roadmap based on what the feedback tells you and your own expertise. Okay, so I guess we have a yes on this.
Yeah, and I think it's more so like the polling SIG release first is more so about getting a idea of a prioritized list before going wider with the community. Because I think the second we hit,
of course,
if we hit this, if we hit the SIG release mailing list, we'll end up with like people asking, can we send it wider anyway, right? So I think it's just to get a quick initial touch of what we think is important, kind of locally, and then vibrating outwards.
All right. All right, so we got one thing done, and I will leave now. Thanks, everybody.
Later, Lori. Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lori. All right, so quick time check. We have about 15 minutes left. Let's go back and do the sub-project updates just so we can have that update. And then whatever time we have left, we can try to do any of the open items or we can punt them to next time. I think either way. Arno, you want to jump in?
Just a quick question for Lori. I see my name mentioned in at least 4 issue. Am I blocked?
Lori's gone.
She dropped already.
Oh, okay, so that's gonna go to Stephen. Like I see my name mentioned on like 4 issue. Can I move forward with this? Am I blocked?
If you, I was not here when this list was put together, so I don't know. If you do feel blocked on any one of those issues, you should comment on the issue and bring it into the SIG release channel.
Yeah, because basically the main one is the first one, get consensus on how we sign the system packages. I feel like we should own our own GPG keys, make them public, and do a double release of the system packages in maybe 126 or 127. That's where I'm blocked.
Okay, so I feel that what we need to do next needs to be prioritized above who should hold the keys.
Okay.
I think the question of should there be GPG keys is a question that kind of should be prioritized ahead of who should hold the keys. But you know, if I was to answer who should hold the keys right now, my immediate answer would be release engineering.
Okay. So if we go with that, we need to have someone from release engineering creating a GPG key. And we basically build a web of trust between release manager, and we make
so
that
the whole web of trust thing is part of the reason. The web of trust, maintaining a web of trust in a distributed environment is part of the reason that I have been hesitant to move forward with this kind of thing for the last few years, to be honest. I think that it's not going to be something that we solve here, but I do think we should continue to discuss it and maybe make it the topic for a meeting by itself.
Okay.
That seems like a good idea.
Yeah, to Jeremy's point, question 0 is, do we do GPG? I think even going further back, it's, do we maintain these packages ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. I feel we need to organize a separate meeting about this. We'll try to find some time to do that.
We do, and I think given that these are assigned to you, if you want to take point on working on getting that meeting together, that'd be appreciated.
Okay. And my second and last question is, there are patch release planned for tomorrow, and I want to know if I'm waiting for the fix from Adolfo to get merged, or I can go for it before without consider those fix merge.
That was what I was going to talk just now.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So, well, for context, since we implemented signing of the container images, the image promotion process time simply quadrupled, and now it takes literally hours sometimes. But there was an issue with the last patch releases where for some reason I don't think we have a proper postmortem of what happened during those patch releases. The releases extended for, I don't know, I think I saw a message from Carlos that he even made the timeout on the image promotion. He extended it to 4 hours or so, and it still failed. So we implemented the signing code in the promoter to make the signature and verification operations in parallel. So the PR is now ready. I mean, I just have to fix some of the final reviews from Sasha. But over the weekend, I have like 3 problems. Basically 3 race conditions initializing, all related to the tough cache, to the tough cache inside of cosign, initializing the cache, accessing the cache, and also assigning them. So the first one, I was able to circumvent it in the promoter. The second one was already fixed, but the fix wasn't in the cosign version we're using. And the third one, I actually submitted a patch to the SIG libraries, which merged this morning, but we still have to allow that commit to trickle down from SIG to cosign, from cosign to our libraries, and from our libraries to the promoter. So we are now faced with the question of, should we wait for that or no, which is exactly the question that Arno was asking. And we also have the alpha one, the alpha 0, the alpha 125.
Yeah, the first one.
I would just start rolling everything forward. Pull everything at main and just call it a day. I don't think we need to wait for those releases and to get this done. I think there's only one that we're concerned about that is not under our purview. The rest of them, right, should be fine to roll forward.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is that we need those. I don't mind pulling the repositories ahead, but the problem is that we still need to wait for SIG, and then from SIG to cosign, and then we can pull that into our libraries.
Okay, so it hasn't landed in SIG yet.
Yeah, it landed in SIG but from there it had to go to SIG /cosign. So what we can do is we can start doing the releases and see how the merge on that side is going, and if we see that it's still going to take some time, we can split the promotion in chunks for now, or the other would be delaying, which in the end could mean the same thing.
The release is tomorrow.
Well, we're overdue for the 125 alpha.
Yeah, alpha, I'm planning to do it today because everybody has been pinging me on that. And for everyone who's curious about this is the reason. CC knows, so thank you so much for being so patient. And starting from there, we can define the rest of the calendar for 125. I don't know for the patch releases, but yeah, as I have mentioned many times, like this is not necessarily a blocker. As Navarin said in the chat, whoever does the patches, I think it's Arno, you can split the PRs in 2. And in my experience, and Carlos, the main problem was that we were even more understaffed because it was during the KubeCon and post KubeCon week, so everyone was out. So it was basically himself and myself, and we need 2 people on the same time zone at the same time to do the different PRs. Otherwise, it takes a full day or 2. So with the current situation, but I think that if that gets tackled, if I volunteer myself to be here for anyone who cuts the releases, and yeah, I'll be here. So I think once yeah, that's it.
Or no?
My question is specifically for about the release tooling. If basically the fixes merge in SIG store, everything else is just a bump of Golang package, right?
Right, but it's not where it needs to be yet. It needs to be in cosign first.
Exactly. Well, just I just checked, and I think it merged 1 hour ago from Sigstore to Cosign. I just have to make sure that because they moved a bunch of libraries from Cosign to Sigstore. So I just have to check that the last PR includes the commit from my PR, and if that's the case, then we should be ready to pull that into our libraries. I'll check and confirm later in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, I would ideally love us to kick off the release with this solved. So if we can wait until Adolfo has confirmed that first.
Sure. Yes.
I put the link of the patch in the Zoom chat.
Thanks.
And I'm dropping the pull request from Sigstore to Cosign. Okay, so we check and confirm this, and then I'll start pulling everything all the way down to the promoter.
Thanks so much for doing this. It's great work.
Okay. I will try to monitor if they cut a release for the cosign packages and it trying to bump the release tooling.
So we're not so much waiting for a new release cut. We're just once it merges and we've confirmed that it's in the place that it needs to be, we can roll forward on their head.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, you know, as whenever they cut a new release, a dependabot will pick up the new release anyway. So it's not a big deal.
Okay.
Exactly.
Anything else for release engineering?
Just a heads up, please reserve time from the Google Build admins today itself, so that they know that they have to be ready with their approvals by tomorrow morning. This usually takes a little bit of time, so doing it a day or two ahead is better for the patch releases. We don't need it for the pre-release.
Thanks, Nabar.
That's a good point to add. Thank you. Okay, we have. Oh, go ahead, Stephen.
Can we also? It's so good that if it isn't already, it should be part of the release manager documentation. So if it isn't in someone,
Yeah,
just flag that should be added.
noted. But I think it is. I think that the situation that we all know is that they are also very understaffed. So it is probably an emphasis on the timing, that even earlier, that you have to schedule that even earlier, but it is part of the official docs.
Okay, cool.
Okay, we have 3 minutes left. Cece, do you want to give an update on the release team?
Oh, sure. I guess the biggest update is, like, we had a discussion last week regarding of extending the enhancement phase, and we made the decision of extending the enhancement phase for the 1.25 release by 1 week. So now the enhancement phase was moved to next Thursday instead of this Thursday. That's the biggest update. Other than all the PRR deadline also moved to this Thursday. After talking with the PRR reviewers, but they seems went well on that topic, so shouldn't be affecting them much. I guess that's the biggest update, and we have onboarded all the release team, and it seems working fine so far. Yeah. We are still as like Veronica mentioned it before, we're still expecting the alpha to be cut for the 1.25. Yeah, I'll monitor that as well.
Just to be clear, is this alpha 1 or alpha 2?
One.
Okay.
One, but the calendar already said that Alpha 2 was due this week, which is not the end of the world. We have to update it, but I was sort of planning to, once we had one, and plan the rest of the calendar. But yeah, what
Yeah,
I will
that's fine.
do,
That's completely fine.
okay, what I will do, CC, is regardless of the state of Alpha 1, I will give you the calendar today. And that's it.
Well, thank you so much. We should be fine. It's not a blocker for us. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great.
Okay, any quick questions for the release team before we adjourn for the day? All right, so that with that, we are pretty much at time. I hope everybody has a great rest of your Tuesday, or if it's Wednesday somewhere, have a happy Wednesday.
Later, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Mhm.